Cam, what's your favorite word for vagina?
See, it takes some time.
Kitty cat.
Number 3.
For JJ.
Penis flytrap.
Coochie.
For vagina.
For vagina?
Yeah, what's your favorite word for it?
Badge or flower?
Okay, thanks.
Come on. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about
sexual activity. So we all know a little something about sexual activity. I personally believe sexual activity is something that is, you are performing something that is arousing you, and that's going to lead to you having sex. So you could be performing oral sex, you could be masturbating, you could be sucking some boobies, or you could just be grabbing some ass or something like that. You could just be doing anything. And I mean, nowadays people get turned on from anything. So even like just kissing, I guess you could be, that could be sexual activity because it's going to lead to sexual pleasure, which there is a philosopher, Robert Gray, he thinks that sexual activity leads to sexual pleasure, and it could be from any type of physical or, you know, like verbal, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual, because he thinks you could be holding hands with your partner and you could be like rubbing each other's thumbs, or you could be squeezing each other's hands hard or something like that, and that may arouse some people. And so he believes that holding hands is going to lead to sexual pleasure. So you could be holding hands and bam, next thing you know, y'all are in the bed and y'all making love. Like, that's what he thinks. So I personally believe that it could, I mean, anything that turns you on is a sexual activity, whether you're doing it to another person, they're doing it to you, or you're doing it to yourself.
Oral sex is having sex.
Personally, I don't consider oral sex as having sex.
Okay. Do you consider someone a virgin if they've had oral sex?
Yeah, I think that you're a virgin until you actually have
like penis, vagina sex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sex is having sex. I think they're still a virgin if they have oral sex because they didn't really do the real action yet.
Okay, so I personally do believe that oral sex counts as actual sex, considering the fact that it's considered a sex act, so I don't really understand how that name would be attached to something that's not considered something that'd be related to, like, oh yeah, I'm probably losing my virginity because I'm performing that. Also, another thing is the fact that it's like, my rule of thumb is like, if you did something like that to a child and it's considered molestation, you're probably not a virgin anymore.
Okay, thanks Cam.
That makes sense.
I define a healthy relationship as being someone, or being in a relationship that isn't based off sex. So you have the loyalty. You guys connect through communication, through personalities, and other things that if even sex was in the equation, you wouldn't dislike that person in a way, because if they stopped having sex or something like that, you'll still have a healthy relationship, not based off of sex. Pros and cons to like having sexual relationships is like, one pro is it feels good, you get, you know, you're high for 30 seconds or more, and then a con is that you can get dickmatized or like vice versa, pussy whipped. Dickmatized, if you don't know, dickmatized is like when you get hypnotized by the dick and you just like, oh Lord, this is so good. And then pussy whipped is, you know, when a guy or girl gets whipped by a dude and, you know, they just whipped by the pussy and they keep coming back. That's it.
I feel like sex is an important part of getting to know your partner, and just, it's an important part of intimacy. Not the only part of intimacy, but it's a key component. It develops trust, it develops a lot of key aspects in a healthy relationship, in my opinion.
There's really two viewpoints regarding sex, which is sexual optimism and sexual pessimism. Sexual optimism is basically viewing sex as like a heavenly act and a bonding mechanism between two people. It's all about like pleasing yourself and the other while delighting in their mind and their flesh. And sexual pessimism is kind of like a twisted version of what a sexual relationship is. It's kind of like how manipulation is first required by making ourselves look better by putting on makeup or different clothing. And then how uncontrollable arousal kind of consumes us and the person loses themselves in the act, and it's just kind of an animal-like, gross thing.
Okay, I would definitely align myself with the more optimistic view because I feel like when you're in a committed monogamous relationship, it's important to be able to have good sex and to feel like not only is your partner happy, but you're happy too, because that's just functional. I feel like with the more pessimistic and the more dysfunctional side, it's not good because your partner is always going to feel left out, or, you know, like they're not a person to you, perhaps. And I feel like good sex differentiates between a friendship or a roommate situation. It's very bonding. It's very important to, you know, kind of have that time with your partner.
I think I align myself mostly with the sexual optimism. One, just because I do feel like sex is an intimate act and it should be done between people that have feelings for each other. When I think of the other point of view, I think of people who just have sex to have sex, which I feel like is what our society has come to nowadays. And I feel like that's not right. I feel like it should only be done with people that you have some sort of feelings for.
Is sex only morally meaningful if it's with someone you care for?
I feel like only because it's like if you care for that person, like I want to give you something that means a lot to me, you know, and that's something that some people can connect through. Now if you're just like like you're just sleeping around, you don't really care about that person, it's just like, really, why? And it's just like there's no feeling, and it's just like, why do you do it if you don't care about the person? Why not give it to somebody who you care for? I mean, that's the only thing that people complain about nowadays. It's like, oh, why can't anybody cares? I'm like, well, a couple different number of things, but yeah.
Having sex with someone that you care about is morally good, just because you won't not feel bad about it, but you're just gonna feel a sense of, I guess, relief if it's with someone that you care about, because you know that there's feelings involved, you know that there's love involved, and it just makes everything better.
I think that having sex with someone who you really care about and love, I do think is morally good, but I don't think it's necessarily morally better if you do than you don't. Some people just don't attach feelings to sex, and that's a preference, and some people do attach feelings to sex, so I can't sit here and say it's morally good if you only have it with someone that you care about if you don't, but I guess I personally believe that it is the outcomes of with someone meaningful are a little bit better while you're actually having sex. It makes the whole thing kind of, I guess, more pleasurable because you know how that person feels about you. It's more intimate. You know what the other person likes and what they don't. So I do think it helps, but I don't think that morality should be the basis of whether you have sex with someone you know or you don't know.
Does sex lose value if you have sex before marriage?
Not really. Well, in some cases, like if you just like sleep around and you just do it after, then yes, it kind of like loses its value. But I believe like it's more of like the connection with the person that has its value if you're like having sex. Like it just, like for me, it's just like, especially if it's your first time or it's not your first time, it's like you connect with that person. As long as you connect with that person, then I believe like sex in that relationship has its value.
I believe that sex actually kind of does lose value if it's before marriage, because I feel like if you're sleeping around with anyone and everyone, you kind of don't really care for sex as much as people should.
I personally don't think that sex loses its meaning if you do it before marriage, just because I feel like the whole concept of losing your virginity after you get married is kind of like a social construct. Not a social construct, but you know, it depends on your religion. So I feel like as a whole, you know, you can't say, oh, it's bad to have sex before marriage or it isn't. I feel like that's very subjective to the person that you're talking to.
Consent's an important topic to discuss in terms of sex. It's something that relates to your morality, which does affect sex. Often, this is a difficult topic to discuss because it's a difficult topic to define.
Can you give me your best concise definition of consent?
Consent is essentially like agreeing, like both like wholeheartedly agreeing that you want to do something, or like getting consent from someone, like someone like tells you that they're okay with this, they want to do this, and they're like willing, and like it's not like they have to be convinced to do it.
Where does consent fall in terms of importance in a relationship, sexual or platonic, to you?
It's really important, especially like in relationships, and it's about like security and trust mostly. It's like being able to trust your partner or your friend not to do something to you that you don't want them to do to you, and vice versa.
How does consent relate to having a good sexual relationship?
Consent's honestly the most important part of having like a sexual relationship with someone. It's pretty much about like, building trust with the other person, and without consent, it's not a sexual relationship. If it's one-sided, then it's sexual assault.
What is your opinion on affirmative consent, meaning you have to hear yes, and like silence doesn't equal consent?
Yeah, I mean, you have to hear yes, and like I was saying earlier, that it can't be like convinced yes, or like it has to be like yes from like the get-go, like that they very much want to. Yeah, silence is not yes. It's no.
Sex ed is basically defined as the instruction on issues relating to human sexuality, basically including emotional relations and responsibilities, human sexual anatomy, sexual activity, sexual reproduction, the age of consent, reproduction health, reproduction rights, safe sex, birth control, and sexual abstinence. Typically, kids learn about sex through their parents, and school sex ed classes should expand and explain the basic specifics behind sex and all that. And when sex ed starts kind of depends where you are in the world. Like, you can be in the Netherlands and you can start at 4 years of age, or you can be in the US and start at 12 years of age. Though some schools don't even offer sex ed, opting for like an abstinence approach, which is pretty interesting in a modern world.
What was your earliest memory regarding sexual education?
My earliest memory regarding sexual education probably has to deal with something like from TV. I don't really remember specifically. I just kind of always remember knowing about it.
Well, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I was just flipping through the channels, and I came across the Playboy channel. Something inside me knew that I couldn't get caught watching it, but I also knew that something about it was just right.
My earliest memories regarding sexual education would have to be sometime a little bit before elementary school, when my friend had told me that if you drank from the same cup as a boy, you would get pregnant. And I believed that for a little bit, until another friend had told me a little bit more about the basic mechanics of it all. Penis and vagina fit perfectly together. And then I found out about that later on, hands-on experience.
Do you think porn hurts relationships?
I definitely think porn hurts relationships just because of the unrealistic expectations it sets for the partner. Also, I believe that it's kind of like sex is such like a gateway of manhood, of masculinity, that I think a lot of guys who are virgins like look at porn and think that's what they expect out of sex and what they have to do during sex.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
I don't think porn is necessarily cheating. That's kind of very subjective. Like, each relationship has its different boundaries.
Okay, thanks, Nia.
I feel like one thing that porn has taught me is that I'm very unathletic. So the answer to this question, I give a yes and a no, only because it depends on the situation and the person. I feel like it can be harmful, but only if the person does not separate that fantasy from the reality. So for example, I wouldn't personally show like a child porn because it's like child comma porn.
Yeah.
To distinguish that. But because it's like a kid probably wouldn't know any better, and they'd feel like, oh, so this is how that works. So then when they get older, that's how
it's fake, yeah.
To be. And it's not that at all.
Because like they have to do so many cuts and stuff like that. Like to make a porn video.
Yeah, versus a person who's just like maybe older and they just need some sexual release. It's just something that's there rather than just like actually knowing that sort of thing.
And they definitely like make the videos a lot longer.
Yeah.
Than they should. And so people go into it having like unrealistic ideas about basically every part of it.
I think it hurts relationships.
Okay, why do you think that?
I know so many girls who've like had their boyfriends want to do like threesomes and crap like that. That's like really disrespectful.
Wait, that happened to you? It's like so many girls. It's like.
I don't think that it should be an expectation in every relationship you go into, but if you like actually discuss it with your partner, it's like, hey, I want to do this. Are you cool with it or not? It talks about like what's okay and then what's the intersecting point for the two of you. Then it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But the idea, the expectation's not good.
Yeah, but it sucks because like, what if you love someone and they're like, yo, you're good, but I want to add someone else to it.
Yeah, it's like.
You're stingy. You don't like to share.
Yeah, that's how most humans are. Like, why would you want to share someone?
I don't mind sharing.
I don't see a threesome as you're not enough for me.
Yeah,
I don't see it as that though. I don't see a threesome as you're not enough for me. I see it more as like we're spicing up. Exactly. Like, if anything, this person is for kind of both of us.
Different points of view.
Not for me. I'm just like, why? Oh no, this is like uncomfortable, and I don't know if like it's that area of jealousy where it's like.
I feel like I like that. I feel like I kind of like seeing my partner with someone else.
That's because you're a boy.
And then,
I like.
About like boundaries and you set boundaries before you do anything, then that's okay. As long as you know, I can't do this or I can't do this. You don't cross those boundaries and you keep everything where both of you feel comfortable. I feel like it's okay.
Okay.
I watch